You heard the panel, and they told you a story, each of them one story. And it would be impossible to discuss each story separately. There was the story of Mary. She offered to do a favor for a neighbor, and it was bungled. Not by her, but by her mother-in-law. And that's what we call an event, a happening, an occurrence. In other words, something going on either outside you, as in this particular case, or inside you, as in so many daily, hourly occasions. Indeed, every second, every minute, things go on, things don't stand still, both outside you and inside you. And what is more common than to know and to notice that there are events? And events are sometimes embarrassing. For instance, if when Mary promised to perform a certain service and had to default on it, that's embarrassing indeed. And other events are perhaps painful, but all of this is average. The average of events taking place and causing certain effects. So events are of no great importance. There are events that are extremely important, catastrophes, emergencies, but how often do they happen? We don't discuss such extraordinary situations. We discuss daily life and nothing else. What you are likely to bungle is not an emergency. An emergency rolls on. Sometimes you can stop it, but if you can't stop it, that's no bungling. That may happen to anybody. That's an average occurrence that human beings are unequal to emergencies, to catastrophes. But daily life is something that human beings should be adjusted to. They should be able to deal with it satisfactorily. And the question arises, if things in daily life are common, routine, easy to handle for the average person, why is there so much bungling in this world? And why particularly do my patients bungle their life so outrageously? Their life is average daily life just as well as that of other people. There are very few emergencies and catastrophic events in the lives of my patients. Their life is routine, and why do they bungle it? And bungle it almost systematically, almost continuously. You will understand that there is an issue here, a problem that should be discussed and should be settled, if possible. The conclusion that I want you to draw is that events in outer environment and even in inner environment are routine in the overwhelming majority of instances. So adjustment should be routine too, but you know it is not. And if adjustment is disturbed, it is not disturbed by events. That happens sometimes, but as a routine matter, it's impossible that the events that the average person disposes of with ease should be such a stumbling block to my patients. It is not the events. It is not true, for instance, that if these fruit juice bottles that Mary bungled, that they were the cause for her commotion. That's nonsense. That's an average mistake, a routine mistake that anybody can incur, and that wouldn't disturb anybody, except for a short time. What is of importance is not the event, but the attitude that you take to the event. And I want you to distinguish clearly and energetically between the event that happens in environment, either in outer environment or in inner environment, and the attitude which you take. Not the event, but you. The attitude is yours. It is not of the event. And if you bungle, it's due to your attitude. And the attitude can be controlled, can be changed, can be improved. It can be omitted, it can be adopted, it can be manipulated. The event usually cannot. Events happen, and if somebody asks you for a favor that's an event, how can you prevent that? And why should you? If anybody does something outside you that's an event, how can you prevent events? How can you change them? They are done by somebody outside you. Or if an event takes place inside you and you have a vomiting spell, a crying reaction, or discomfort of any kind, well, that comes. You have hardly any control over it. The only thing you can do is to take an attitude that will not increase the inner discomfort, will not influence the inner event adversely. All you can do is to take a favorable attitude and not an unfavorable attitude. And we'll ask ourselves, what does it mean to call an attitude favorable or unfavorable? If you want to discuss that, you will have to reach out into some sort of a philosophy, into things that are not just capable of being discussed in simple terms. They must be discussed in somewhat philosophical terms. Yet I will not introduce technical terms and technical philosophies here. You must instead have at your fingertips two words that are very simple, but that are usually not used in the context which I will present. You see, if I deal with myself and with others, what is my purpose? Well, simply speaking, my purpose in life is to make myself and those people that are close to me, let me say the members of my family, my friends, my neighbors and so forth, my co-workers, to make them feel good and to make myself feel good. And if you want to express it in another term, then the purpose of life is to avoid as many disturbances as possible. And another way of expressing it is, the purpose of life is to produce as much relaxation to my body and to my mind as possible, and also to the bodies and minds of other people that are close to me. But all of it really means two things. First, to try to produce relaxation and try to prevent disturbances of relaxation. To produce the production of that thing that is the purpose of life, and to prevent interference with that thing or disturbance of that thing that we call the purpose of life. You see, that's what the physician tries to do with the human body when it is disturbed. The human body is disturbed, that means there is a disturbance, this means an imbalance of certain things that should balance. For instance, the minerals should balance among themselves. There should not be too many minerals of a certain kind and too few of another kind. They must balance. Then they are in harmony with one another, they do teamwork together, and everything in the body is then relaxed if the ingredients of the body are kept in harmony and in balance. In the mental sphere, if one idea does not fight with the other, if there is no conflict, if there are no too many conflicts, if fear does not wipe out hope, and instead fear cooperates with hope and creates just mild worry being a junction of mild fear and mild hope, if resentment does not wipe out peacefulness, but there is a little resentment and yet a desire for peace, then there is balance. It's not all out peace, but not all out resentment either. And when we view the entire body, the entire organism, both body and mind, then we say everything in body and mind should be as much at peace with one another as possible. And so the real aim in life is peace. Before we called it balance and harmony, but it's peace. And what disturbs peace is mainly temper, aside from physical disturbance. Somebody may have an organic disease, or somebody else may have been run over, somebody else may have been shot, and so forth. We don't discuss these disturbances. When we here discuss disturbances, then we mean temper and nothing else. And so we oppose temper to peace. You remember I told you our purpose is to have peace inside and outside, peace with people and peace with oneself. I would like to be at peace with myself and God. That's the purpose of life. And temper produces something that is by no means peace. It removes peace. But what it actually produces is the desire for gaining a victory over an adversary. Temper aims for victory, for beating down somebody, for holding down somebody, for telling somebody off, or telling him outright that you are wrong. So temper is a fight. and aims for victory. And in order to gain victory, you must use power, strength, what we call it power. So will you understand that temper uses power and creates a life of power, or desire for power, appreciation of power. And the reverse of power is peace. And so we come back to our original theme. The purpose of life is to maintain peace. Peace between minerals, peace between hormones, peace between the various parts of the nervous system and so forth, but particularly peace of mind and peace of action, calm of action. And if power is the reverse of peace, and temper uses power and craves power, then you understand the two forces that work in life are primarily peace and power. And the patient, and that's the only person that I speak about at present, and the patient who cannot introduce or maintain peace in his interior, in his inner environment, and suffers untold agonies because of that, is of course not at peace. And he comes to me because he wants me to restore his peace. He calls it adjustment, relaxation, ability, but essentially it is peace. And he is at war with himself. And his muscles fight against himself. And his stomach puts up reactions which are directed against the person's peace. And his entire body consists of parts that act against the total. And when parts act against the total, there is no peace. And now the patient should naturally know that his purpose in life is to have peace. And so you would imagine that that patient who has lost peace and wants to restore it again would employ peaceful means in order to restore peace. Because you can't restore peace with fighting, with power. Certainly not inner peace. But the patient is a fighter. This means the patient develops temper. And through temper he strives to cure himself or to avert certain unpleasant consequences. He fights and exercises his power so he can find peace. And the patient's purpose particularly should be directed towards restoring peace, otherwise he can't get well. And I have to train the patient and teach him how to restore peace to his organism. And when I begin to train him, what must I tell him? You must reduce or eliminate your temper. And that is something that is certainly not easy to perform. And more than that, temper means I want to gain a victory. This means I want to boost my ego. I want to be strong, powerful. I want to be the victor and he should be the victim. And that can never bring peace. That can never bring adjustment. Even if you win victories over victories, but that is not peace. And there are plenty of people that will irritate after the one victim has been down, and they will be fighting again. But look here, what a lure it is to a human being to be victorious, to gain victories. There is glamour in it, glory. And that is closest to one's ego. Everybody either craves glamour and glory, or he gives up because he thinks he can't achieve it. But essentially, especially in our day, in the 20th century, glory and glamour, aside from fame and fortune, are the things that at any rate young people crave, and the oldsters these days apparently too. At any rate, you will understand that glamour, the glamour of gaining a victory over somebody, is something that is close to the ego. You identify with yourself with the glamour if you crave it. And so you understand, my job is not just to restore peace. It is to make the patient drop something that is closest to him. And I tell you, I personally have not given up temper yet, and I will never give it up. I can't. That's human nature. And yet I keep peace within myself as much as anybody might want to do or can do. And how do I do it? Not by giving up temper, but by controlling it, holding it down. And then I gain a victory over my temper. And that makes me proud of myself. And so I gain self-control and self-pride or self-respect, let me say. And all of this counteracts against temper and helps me holding down temper. And the more self-respect I gain, the more is my temper held down. And the more it is held down, the easier it is for me to maintain self-respect and pride. And pride produces something that we call stimulating tenseness, and that counteracts the irritating tenseness produced by temper. And you see, the sovereign means of combating temper is control of temper. You can't knock out temper with control, but you can hold it down and create self-respect and self-confidence, and these produce this stimulating tenseness that wipes out the irritating tenseness produced by temper. And so temper hangs in the air, it lives in a vacuum. If you control it and thereby gain self-respect and naturally therefore self-confidence. Thank you.